other crunchy views regarding a whole host of other topics like attachment parenting. She has a whole book on attachment parenting, promoting attachment parenting. GMOs, GM tech, she's anti-GMOs. Vaccines. She said in 2009 that we are a non-vaccinating family, although she seems to have walked that back, but it's not really clear where she stands. She's also pro-unschooling and Waldorf inspired, as she says. Waldorf education was created by that crazy quack racist who also invented biodynamic farming. I have a whole video on that if you're interested. And then there's this. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. By current conventional standards, both of my sons qualified for speech, occupational, and physical therapy, and I gave them none. Both walked at a ripe 17 months. My older son did not speak sentences until well after 3. My younger son, age 2, communicates exceedingly well with signs and gestures, but has not uttered a 2-word phrase or even an appropriately formed word. My boys were physically very cautious, shunning jumping, running, and even climbing long after their peers mastered them, and my younger son did not roll over unassisted until, wait for it, the day he turned 1. He apparently has a weak set of core muscles that he now compensates for beautifully without anyone noticing but me and my husband. So why didn't I send my children for assessment and therapy? For the same reason that I don't tell them to say please or thank you. Confused yet? Yes, more than a little bit. Don't be. Barring outstanding medical concerns, I believe in letting children progress in their own way and pace, modeling behavior while respecting the innate development of a child as an autonomous and purposeful creature. I believe that children, like adults, and perhaps better than most adults, generally know what works for them. Just goes to show you that even someone with a degree in neuroscience can believe in and promote really dangerous stuff, terrible pseudoscience. And actually, people who are well educated may be more prone to this, to, questioning consensus on vaccines and GM tech, and like children receiving proper speech therapy and occupational therapy when they don't roll over until they're a year old. Yeah, it's pretty funny to have a baby that's over a year old, that if they fall on their back, they cannot get up. And I looked it up. So if tiny baby, is pulling up and not quite cruising yet, but is going to start cruising soon. Same with toddler. Toddler wasn't walking until about 14 and a half months. And it was crazy because they went from not walking to like, oh, I'm walking now. Oh, I'm like running now. It was pretty funny. But yeah, so tiny babies, same kind of thing, crawling like crazy, pulling up, all of that. But if they fall on their back, they just lay there and cry. They can't get up. They literally fall and cannot get up.
So the Unnatural Vegan, I just did a video about her and where she talked about her son's development. And he's over a year old, and he's not developing very well, it doesn't sound like. What are the chances that just a few years ago she was criticizing this Mayim woman for not going to therapy or something over this? And this is why I don't like to criticize other people's parenting skills. She's sitting here with a yellow face and would never, ever question her diet. That is her religion, basically. So, I hope she sees this. I hope she sees, what are the chances that both of you are vegan, sweetie? One vaccinates, one doesn't. And y'all are both having the same developmental issues with your children. What are the chances? Could you possibly acknowledge that it's nutrient deficiency? Could you acknowledge that? Anyway, I wanted to also elaborate a little bit on, because I talked about birth and the difference between home and hospital birth, which I want to do a more detailed video on. But I don't want to give people the wrong idea that you can't connect with your child or something. I don't want people thinking that, because most births are done in the hospital, in our Western way of living. Like I said, my first 2 were. And you're still going to have that connection. I'm just talking about there's a big difference. It's a different sort of, it's almost like the pain is necessary for the build up when you're doing it naturally. The pain and then it all stops at once, and then you're flooded with all these hormones, and then you hold your baby, and then there's no science in the world that could tell you what you need to do after that. That's all I'm saying. Now, as far as oxytocin goes and the actual connection you have with your child, you're still going to have that if you have an epidural or whatever. They can measure in like foster parents and like gay men that have adopted children together. They measure, and these people's all fathers, everyone that it becomes a parent, they have these levels be elevated of this oxytocin in their body. So you're still going to have those connections, of course. Just think all of the interventions kind of set up the stage for what becomes basically this, Swayze, what becomes her. And she talked about how she wanted the nurse, while she was in the hospital, she wanted them to keep the baby out of the room so she could rest and whatnot. It's just so different, otherwise. And you don't even want to go to the bathroom without the baby. You're definitely not wanting the nurse to take the baby out of the room. You're asking them what the hell they're doing, why they want to keep carting the baby off, because they'll do that in the hospital. You got to watch them. But back to Mayim. I guess the Unnatural Vegan has something to look forward to, because look, her sons have grown up and they talk now and they walk. So apparently something worked out. If you look at the little boy's jawline, it's very, very narrow. And if you look at her, this was also 2 years ago, and this is her now. Granted, she's, I think she's in her 40s or something, but Swayze, this is what you have to look forward to. But at least with Mayim, I think she breastfed. I would assume she did, or at least tried to as long as she could. So their microbiomes at least had somewhat of a chance, and she didn't vaccinate, so they had somewhat of a chance there to escape, all of the reactions that come with that, and God knows what sorts of long-term issues. So I'll leave the links in the description, the one I did prior to this and the one she did on Mayim.
It's a religion at this point. It's a really weird, really sad religion.